Hello, this is Mark from Productive Computing and Productive Computing University. Thanks for joining us on this video. We are talking about barcodes, both the traditional type of barcodes like barcode 39 or barcode 128. We are also talking about QR codes, which is the new and improved type barcoding. You know, the ones that you use a phone to scan and it goes to a particular website or a Wi-Fi address or something really complicated and difficult to type. These are the things that we're talking about. And I believe that we have a new and improved way to do this here in 2025 and beyond with the latest versions of FileMaker using a simple single script step. No more barcode fonts, no plugins, no massive amounts of drama. You will need an internet connection in order to establish these barcodes, however, at least to get started, or at least to create them. You don't necessarily need an internet connection after they're created. Other than that, that's the only requirement, but I think you're really going to love the way we do this now here with the latest techniques. So join me, and if you are interested in the demo file, the completely available and unlocked demo file, you can get it at Productive Computing University in a course we also make available for free called FileMaker Features and Free Resources. This course costs you nothing other than your email address, and then once you are in, you can download the file. And you can also watch any associated lessons that we have so that it's not just the file, but it's also the training to go along with the file. Usage, best practices, what's under the hood, how it all works, and so forth. All of this is free for the taking, so have at it. In the meantime, we will look under the hood now, and I'll walk you through this demo as we speak. I'll open up the demo file now called Barcodes and QR Codes. We're presented with some pre-filled data. The top half of this demo references one solution, and the bottom half references another solution, two different providers or two different sources for information to give you some variety. The top solution can produce all kinds of barcodes, including a QR code, whereas the bottom one is allocated or dedicated to QR codes only. So in this top part of the demo, we have the data that we want to present as a barcode, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 9. We choose a scale of 3 on a scale of 1 to 5. That's overall size. And we choose the type, which right now I have code 39. But we can see here I have all kinds of options for different barcodes we can create. In fact, this is just a partial list of what this solution is actually capable of. There's a lot more that it can do, not listed here. Here at the top, I included the most popular ones, code 39, 128, as well as a QR code. All right, so if I click Create, it will go and take this data, call a single script step, and produce a barcode here in a container field. That's what this is. It's a container field. So it's really easy to resize, like so. No problem at all. And that works well in many areas of FileMaker. On the same button bar, I have an About screen where you can go to see more about the source of this and the author. It appears that he's accepting donations. And besides that, I also have a button for documentation, which brings you to someplace similar, but here we have the quick guide, the barcode reference, the options, and the knowledge base. So if you really want to get to know this particular solution, there's a lot more here that's not covered in the demo, but yet it's available to you as a developer, all kinds of options. For example, if I click on the barcode reference, you'll see these are the different barcodes you can create. And not only can you create these different types, but you have control over their size, their color, the placement of various things. Even the thickness of the lines is all something you can control just by sending it specific parameters. Okay, below the Create button, I have a courtesy object here, which is a layout calculation, telling us the image size, the height, and the width. Sometimes you can't see all of that information just by looking at an image in a container. So that's code 39. Let's do a code 128. There we go. Let's do a QR code. Fine. You can change the size, and it'll adjust accordingly. Now you might not be seeing the full glory of the size here because my container is only so large. So if you made this larger, then you would see the results of these different size options. See, there's a scale of 1. And besides this scale option, I believe you can also adjust the X and Y coordinates independently from the scale. I just used this option here because it's very easy to understand, makes for a great demo. Okay, so let me go back to code 3 of 9 or code 39 and put that in here. And let's go look under the hood how this works. I'll go to scripts and script workspace. Let's look at the script called create barcode. There are several steps here, but really the only one that matters is step number 5. That's where the barcode is actually being created. These first 2 script steps are just housekeeping script steps. Then we have a comment. Then the work is being done. Then I commit the records just to lock it in. And then everything from here on out is error trapping in the event that you send it a string that the barcode can't naturally produce. This will return an error. All right, let's focus in on step 5, which is the insert from URL script step. I'll click on the gear icon here. And really, we're talking about just 2 things to specify. The target, which is the container field itself. So I've called that barcode image. That's a container. It sits inside the main table here of the demo. In fact, the only table here in the demo. So that's the easy part to understand. Then the part with more detail, I'll click here for the URL itself. So this is a calculated URL. Let me specify this so we can see it a little closer. So we have the root of the URL, which is the HTTPS, and then this is going to a place where this solution is served, and from here on out are the parameters you're sending it. The first parameter, indicated by the question mark, which means that we are beginning the parameter part of our URL query, is the BCID, or barcode ID, equals, and we are pulling that from the type field in the demo itself. So that's where I specify code 39, code 128, QR code. That tells the system what kind of barcode we want to make. Then this joins the next parameter, which is the text. That's the actual data that the barcode is using. That's what's encoded within it, you could say. So that is the barcode data. That's the string 123456999. And we saw that earlier on the demo. And then the next parameter is hard-coded here to include text. This just includes the text below the barcode symbols. So we're saying each and every time a barcode presents itself, if the barcode supports it, put the text, which is this, 123456699, 123456699. That's what that parameter does. And then there's only one more parameter to think about, and that is the scale. The scale is also pulled from the demo, and the options are 1 through 5. Now, although I have a few interesting and probably very important parameters here, this is not the only list of parameters that you can include. In fact, the list goes on of different things you can do to manipulate these barcodes, as I mentioned earlier, including the width of the lines, the color, the positioning, in fact, the margins. All kinds of things can be really specified in great detail, but in order to do that, you'll need to look at the documentation and read about that between the barcode reference, the options reference here, which shows you all the different types of properties. And then within that, you can click here and see, okay, so here's the options to show a border and then specify the width. Here's some text properties to include the text or not. And then if I do include the text, I get to choose the font and even the size. Text positioning, how it's justified, where it's located, all kinds of things. Really, it's a barcode creator's dream. All right, let's finish analyzing the script and then we'll look at the solution down below. So then the next step simply commits the record to lock in the data. That's just a best practice. It technically isn't required to make it work. Then we have the error trapping portion, which is the rest of this. Because barcodes are particular in terms of you can easily give it a string that's too long, too short, or doesn't begin with the right symbol, the barcode will reject that because it's not compliant within its structure or within its format guidelines. So you'll get errors all the time if you give it some bad information. So I figured I'd write a whole routine here to properly get those errors for you in an easy way. So what happens if there is an error, and we'll spoof this here in a second to see, it will create a text file and embed that in the container field. Then we extract the container field contents into a temp directory and open it up using the built-in option here, which says automatically open the file. So this will make more sense when you see it in action. If I throw this for a loop, for example, if I put an @ symbol here, which code 39 doesn't properly accommodate, and click create, we'll get our error that says there was an error creating the barcode. We'll now export the contents and open up the text file to read what the error is. So there's the text file it created inside the container field. That'll send it to a temp directory. Then it'll open the file that was created, and then you can read exactly what's going on. Code 39 must contain only digits, capital letters, spaces, and the symbols minus, period, dollar, /, plus, and %. @ is not one of those compatible symbols, so that's why it can't produce a code 39 barcode. Incidentally, though, other codes and configurations are far more forgiving, which takes me to my next topic, which is the QR code. So if I now create that, that's no problem because the QR code is far more forgiving. It can take almost any symbol because it has to deal with websites and all kinds of information. It's geared for holding a lot of information, so the @ symbol doesn't trip it up. Next, let's look at the bottom solution. It works in the exact same way. Let me create a QR code for productive computing. And this solution is another source or another provider. This is a full-blown API, but here you can see it's a completely different web page and it has a completely different set of documentation. But if you dig deep on this, you'll be able to see the parameters, the required ones and the optional ones, and you can manipulate your QR code accordingly. I've built in 2 options for width and length. And then we have several options here from very small to quite large. Of course, my container field is a fixed size, so if I wanted to gain an appreciation for how big this barcode is, I could right-click and export the field contents, and I'll say QR code large. And I should have given it an extension of PNG. And that should open right up to a barcode. In fact, you can see that the actual size is even bigger than what my current screen is displaying. All right. So when you're working with barcodes in a database system, and let's say you were doing inventory, these are simply container fields. So you'll be essentially adding images to your inventory, barcode images that is, and you can plan accordingly. Now, if you didn't need to store your barcodes permanently, you could create them on the fly. For example, let's say you were receiving new inventory and you needed to print labels for, let's say, 10 items in a batch. You could just go and have FileMaker create the barcodes on the fly right before you print them. That way you don't have to store the images permanently and increase the size of your database. Although these images are tiny for the most part. In fact, this is the biggest one, but if I made something more reasonable in terms of size, you'll see that it goes from 1.18 kilobytes to 0.56 kilobytes, so quite a bit smaller there. So how you implement this in a given solution is up to you. Bottom line is you just need to call that insert from URL to create it, and you're good to go. Also keep in mind that there may be limits in terms of rate, and that means number of barcodes you can create per second, or overall scale, which means if you are planning on barcoding 100,000 items, you may want to verify that these solutions will handle that kind of volume. In the first case here, if we go to the About, the intention is that this particular solution is meant for light usage or demo purposes. If you really wanted to get serious and you're doing 24/7 barcode creation on a mass scale, the idea is you would take the source code from here and implement this on your own website so that you can run it with reckless abandon. And at that point, if you wanted to contribute to the author for their cool solution, that's entirely up to you. In the second solution, it's more of a commercial solution, but even with that, they don't necessarily come out and list the pricing right at the top in the main nav. But they do have this optional service which says QR code with logo, and they do have some pricing here for various services. And here's what it might look like to have your QR code with your image. This kind of QR code assumes that this is going to be your main company's product or your main company's logo. That's sort of a one-time thing. The way I've designed this demo is more implying that you would want a QR code for various inventory items, or if you were making hundreds and hundreds of links that all needed a QR code. So hopefully this file will get you started with your own barcoding exploration and implementation. I'm quite pleased with how easy it is to do barcoding these days than it was, let's say, 15 years ago, when you needed to consider purchasing barcode fonts or have an elaborate implementation process simply because these online interpreters weren't available. It just wasn't something that was being done in an easy to use or even a free way. Enjoy.